Well, I'm very thrilled to be here with our delightful Prime Minister of Australia, Miss Julia Gillard, and I understand it's her first time on Myspace, so would you make her feel welcome out there in Cyberland? Yes, I can hear them clapping. You have 23,700 friends. Did you know that?
That makes me feel kind of wanted. That's good.
That's good, you are. Now, of the youth voters, that's the kind of people that I'm going to try and speak to today. At last count, there were 2.7 million young Australians under the age of 30 who were going to be voting for this election, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to speak to them today. I wanted to ask you a few questions about yourself and your taste. Now, it's a good time to be a redhead.
It is a good time to be a redhead. I'm trying to do what I can for other redheads around the nation.
And me and Lee Sales do appreciate that, in fact.
I'm glad I'm helping out, and I actually do think when I go to schools these days, you know, they get children to greet you at the gate.
Yeah.
I think they are disproportionately selecting redheaded children, so I think that's kind of nice.
To send them out.
Yeah, send them out, make them feel special.
Tell me a little bit then about what sort of music you like.
Oh look, I'm a dreadful, 80s kind of dag,
It's
a
very
child
cool at
of
the
that
moment.
era. Well, you're getting old when you live to see the things of your teenage years and early 20s come back. They are coming back now, so I think that's proving ageing for me. But, I was a big Bruce Springsteen fan, Chisel fan, that kind of stuff.
Talking to the heart here.
And talking to the heart.
Can I give you a couple of either-ors just to make it simple?
Okay.
Okay, Beatles or Stones?
Stones.
Okay. Pavarotti or Bryn Tervel?
Pavarotti.
Okay. Beyonce or Lady Gaga?
Lady Gaga.
Awesome. What do you like about Lady Gaga?
I feel a moderate connection to her because Tim's daughter has worked doing some hair and makeup for her.
Oh,
yes.
6 degrees, eh? Could you tell us a little bit about what you admire in the quality of leadership?
I think in the quality of leadership, you need to be able to consult and take people with you. You do genuinely need to lead and have a vision. I grew up in South Australia with Don Dunstan, and I think he's a sort of political leader that I do admire. I mean, everything people would identify about South Australia in the modern age, the food, the wine, the arts festival, all came out of the Dunstan era.
I'm going to put it to you that the young voters of Australia are feeling somewhat disengaged from this election. In a leader, they look for vision and they look for creativity and passion and foresight. Something for them hasn't been ignited in this election, and I wanted to ask you whether that's been noted or whether you realise that.
I suppose that, come election time, I can understand that there's, a lot of carry-on, there's a lot of colour and movement and the stuff that happens on the campaign trail, and people can look at it a bit on their, TV or however they choose to get their information and think, what of myself do I see in this?
Yeah.
But I think underneath it all, the kind of media pack and the campaign trail, there are some big ideas being debated for the nation's future, and they are about jobs and opportunity. They are about what kind of country we want to be, whether we want to be confident and optimistic and outward looking, and some of the policies I think capture that.
Well, I wanted to talk to you first about my lucky ball. Now,
right.
This, Julia, is a ball that has been on many television appearances. It's been thrown into a wall accidentally by Missy Higgins trying to, bowl, and I think it kind of symbolises part of our national identity. Could you touch it for me?
Could.
Oh, thank you. It feels good, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay, good. You've just passed the luck test. It's stayed in your hand. That's
right,
good.
okay.
Thank you. Can I ask you a cheeky question?
Sure.
Where is Peter Garrett? Is he preparing for a tour? I love the man. I really admire him. I think he's he's a big hero in my mind. He's a top dancer, a good politician. But we feel, and I'm speaking on behalf of the tens of thousands of young'uns out there, perhaps that it appears he's been a bit missing in action in this election, and we'd like to hear his voice. Now, that may be an unfair challenge, but I hope you understand where I'm coming from with that.
Look, I do. He's certainly not preparing for a tour. Having seen him perform at the bushfire relief concert in Melbourne,
Wasn't he awesome?
He was awesome, but at one point he did gesture towards his heart, and I I thought at that point as I watched, he's either overcome with emotion or we need to be ringing an ambulance, and it's not clear to me which. So I think he found it pretty physically taxing to get back on stage. So no, he's not preparing for a tour, but he is out and about announcing environment policies. We've announced during this campaign a focus on suicide and suicide prevention.
Which is very important, of course.
Yeah, very concerned that more people lose their lives that way than on our roads.
Yeah, but before suicide there is a long period of time where young people self-harm, and there seems to me like a opportunity very early on where just at the right time the right help can come to that person, and with that small bit of help we prevent a lifetime of potential mental health. And of course I'm not just talking about throwing a tablet at the problem, because we know that mental health is far more complex and far more expensive than that.
Yes, look, it is, and it's about having services on the ground.
Yep.
But the reason we haven't, Tony Abbott's announced a $1.5 billion policy, that's true.
Yeah,
ka-ching. But it's funded by cutting other things out in health and services that people could go to in the first instance when they first need that bit of help, like a GP super clinic or using the GP after hours hotline. So we've taken the focus on suicide. I freely acknowledge more needs to be done. I think what can happen, as if we're re-elected and we're working in a second term, is our health reform agenda, which is about localising services and getting cooperation on the ground, can be made to work for mental health.
My question is really, as a show of goodwill, which Labor have always had in regards to the mental health sector, who may be feeling slightly kind of unappreciated at this point of time, but would probably like to continue their support for Labor, how about considering a Prime Ministerial-led task force in your first 6 months of office, where you actually personally lead that yourself and you create a blueprint and maybe a green paper and a white paper and whatever other coloured paper you like, but that would be a great show of your personal commitment, which I believe you have to mental health.
I would be very happy as Prime Minister, if re-elected, to lead the government's effort in developing the next round of policy in this area.
But things only move when you're personally involved, when you're able to lead it yourself.
I think it needs my involvement, because it needs a whole of government effort. We've talked in this conversation about the direct health services, but beyond that it's also housing and employment and drug and alcohol services and all of that needing to be brought together in a way that works for people. So I'd be very, very happy to be personally involved.
Just as a small aside, one of the musical highlights of my life occurred last weekend at Splendour in the Grass Festival, where, in the great spirit of Australian impersonation, I somehow cracked out your voice. More of a homage than anything else, I think. The thing that I couldn't get is what you probably know has been lovingly termed as the karate chop hands. Have you heard this term?
Now you're making me self-conscious. I'm not going to move my hands.
Sorry. No, but is there? Can I ask? Is there some kind of body training that politicians get? Is this a natural kind of impulse?
It's just me, yes. And
well,
I've always talked with my hands.
And you are in the hands of a complete non-professional, so you're free to talk freely. How do you deal with that kind of scrutiny? You just brush it off?
You can't let it worry you. The election campaign, and I suppose being Prime Minister, it's got its serious side, and then it's got this, sort of media, perhaps a bit of public interest, I suspect more media interest, hand gestures, hair, clothing, all the rest of it, whether or not you've fallen out of your shoe in a factory. I've had all of that. So
wardrobe malfunctions.
We
know about them.
Well, fortunately, I haven't had a wardrobe malfunction, but there's a week of the campaign to go, so anything's possible.
Just tape yourself in and you'll be fine.
We do routinely take 13,750 refugees each year, so we are fairly generous in that sense, but we don't want people getting on boats.
Okay, so in reality, if I were under the circumstances where my family and I were forced to move suddenly from our homeland under violence or threat of violence, I know I'd beg, borrow and steal and do absolutely anything. I'd use all of my resilience to get to safe harbour. I know you adore your family, your mum and dad, talk about them affectionately. I wonder, what would you do? What would you expect from Australia to do on your behalf if you were suffering displacement of that nature?
Well, I would hope that, you know, a country like Australia would be generous about resettling people, and I think we are, but it would also, if you're on the move and fleeing persecution, it's also in your interests that there's somewhere you can stop and have your claim assessed without having to keep moving and moving and moving.
Action on climate change is a little bit on the weak side. So my feeling has been for a long time that we are talking about this all the wrong way. We know that cutting pollution and building a clean economy creates jobs, and we know that by setting a price on carbon we'll be giving businesses, as I said before, those long-term signals they need in order to plan and find good Australian investment. So I'm wondering if perhaps you can say something that will help or encourage Australians to really think differently, to kind of quash our limited thinking on the question of the potential of a cleaner economy.
Look, I think you're absolutely right. This is full of possibilities for us, good possibilities. And I'm as frustrated as anybody else that we haven't got a carbon pollution reduction scheme coming into place, having gone through the Parliament.
Yes.
I mean, I was there in Parliament House the day the political consensus to pass the legislation sort of fell to the ground. I mean, you could almost hear it shatter at the dramatic events in the Liberal Party.
I'm going to have a final question with you, if I may, before you jet set off. And I thank you again for spending the time with me today, and I hope that you guys get it. The question is this: you've had I should probably start by saying I come from a long line of Catholics, and I understand there are a range of different community views on the subject of same-sex marriage. You've had what some would call the courage to come up and say that you're not a religious person, although I know you're a reflective person. I wonder why then, on what grounds you're not able to end the discrimination against same-sex couples who would like to get married, because it was painful for a lot of Australians to watch Penny Wong have to say 2 weeks ago that she didn't support same-sex marriage.
Look, we have acted to end a lot of discrimination by equalising treatment under federal laws, really, sort of practical things like how your medical expenses count for the pharmaceutical benefit safety net. Heterosexual couple used to be different from a same-sex couple, now it's the same. But we've got a very clear policy as the Labor Party that we're not intending to move to amend the Marriage Act.
Can I ask why? I think a lot of us are confused about it. It's not on religious grounds. Why? What's going on there?
I suppose the Labor Party members who come and make up our national conference that decides our platform come from all walks of life and all backgrounds. Some are people of faith, some like me are not people of faith. But we've had the sort of meeting and the discussion, and I think it was a view about where we are at in our society and where marriage sits in our society given our heritage. And so that's the decision of the Labor Party, and obviously one that I support. So I understand this is an issue that there's going to be continuing debate on, and there's disappointment in some sections of the community with my position, with our position, but that is the Labor Party view.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Julia,
you
for meeting with me today.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.